Well, Bob, thank you very much indeed. And that was absolutely fascinating. And there's now an opportunity to ask a few questions. And I, for one, simply cannot wait until later on to hear the full band of the Royal Artillery in full flight later on this afternoon, because it's so clear that their music making is grounded not just within barracks, but within the whole of society. And it's going to be very, very exciting indeed. And thank you very much. If I can ask the first question, and I have the privilege of having talked with you about this before, but this is about the roles that your father and your grandfather had played as musicians in the army previously, and also the relationship between the musical role and the medical role, and has that actually changed through the generations?
It certainly has. My grandfather was a cornet player and a very fine singer, and he was a musician in the Cameron Highlanders. He fought during the Second World War. He was a stretcher bearer at Dunkirk, champion boxer in India. Strange thing for a musician to do, but he was a jock, I suppose. So yes, the medical role has a long history. When I was in Kosovo, there was legislation, I think the legislation was called clinical governance or something like that. Basically what it meant was if you were not were not practicing medicine at any level on a regular capacity, i.e. all of the time, and you were current and competent and all of that, then you shouldn't be doing it. And because, of course, we are musicians, and what tends to happen is when we do deploy, we down our instruments for a while, we then prepare ourselves for the medical road. So we sort of get a high concentration of training to top up. So we are still affiliated in a non-official sense to the medical services. We still support them, but we don't do what you saw my musicians doing back in Kosovo, working in the operating theatre, working on the wards in a sort of supporting role. That doesn't happen anymore, but we do work with the medical services. One of the roles that has been identified for us, but we've never done it and we're never likely to do it, and it might change, is the decontamination of casualties who might have been affected by chemical weapons. So yeah, we're still there, but not as we were.
Hi. I think everybody here is aware of, well, not fully aware, but to some degree aware of the benefits of the music and the therapy it provides for the soldiers when you perform. But if the musicians are providing some therapy to the soldiers, where do the musicians get theirs from? Do you entertain each other musically?
So what you're saying is you can see that we are working with what we do has a therapeutic effect for those for whom we are playing.
Yes.
Who is doing it for us?
Yes.
Well, that's a fantastic question. Of course, when we came back from Iraq the first time, we were on this emotional hamster wheel of doing it time and time again. And I think doing that in itself had a value for us. I mean, some of my musicians saw some pretty horrendous stuff out there, and one or two of them just had a short period of time readjusting and getting over that. But I think the fact that we were doing it and going through that emotional process time and time again had a huge benefit for us, as well as, if not more than, for the people that were getting like one hit. We were doing it 4, 5, 8 times. So I think we kind of look after ourselves in that regard. Does that make sense? Yeah. There's no formal program. Nobody else is doing that for us. No.
I wanted to ask you actually about the repertoire, because you've shown us nearly a 20-year period, haven't you? And you've shown us the band playing in the street to civilians. You've shown us different stages of deployment and so on. Has, over the 20 years, the layperson just thinks of oompa, so to speak, but over 20 years, has the repertoire changed? Do you continually refresh it? What happens?
Okay.
Do you classical at all, or is it pop, rock, marching?
Yeah. That's a great question, and of course it's very, very relevant, because if you're playing for young soldiers, and it's a young person's game, is it not? But if you're playing for young soldiers and officers, then of course if you're entertaining in the field, then it needs to be current, because otherwise they're not going to want to listen to it. When I took the Royal Artillery Band to Iraq in 2006, we opened with a big number, Let Me Entertain You. Who's again? Robbie Williams. That's the one, Robbie Williams. Yeah, and I thought, we're all over this. You know, I was really excited. We performed it really well, and there was all these young soldiers. Do you know any such and such? And of course, I didn't know what they were talking about. So, but some of my younger musicians did. So we thought we were quite current. We were playing music from across the decades, popular music, that was about singing, it was about guitars, drums, and all of that. But I found on that last outing that it wasn't current enough. So to answer your question, the repertoire, we've tackled this. I mean, obviously we do have concert wind bands, larger symphonic wind bands that are performing, the orchestra that you saw me conducting. We've got all of that, and it's sort of horses for courses, the right product for the right occasion. And when we're on ops, it has to be very, very current for our soldiers. So we're like it ain't our hot mum troop of the day, really. So what have we got? Well, you saw the band yesterday, Guy Booth's band, the AGC band. That band is a sign of where we are going. We will have some bands that are about 15 strong that will wholly and solely focus on outputting contemporary music. We are looking at engaging with the Academy of Contemporary Music, Guildford, and engaging with them and bleeding from them their expertise, and probably getting our people in to go and work with some of their youngsters, so a bit of two-way cross-pollination, which I think is really important. We've also got young musicians who are into this wonky gene music. You've got to have wonky genes to play that sort of stuff, I've got to tell you. If you're an orchestral man, that's hard going. But, and I guess I'm of a certain vintage as well. But as I said, I understand the effects, but I don't really necessarily like or understand the music that these youngsters are listening to today. But we have got some youngsters who are writing their own material as well. So we are current. We are certainly updating what we're doing, and I think we're taking it forward with a very positive outlook.
Okay, Bob, thank you very much for an excellent presentation there. I certainly look forward to your memoirs when they come out and the accompanying DVD. As a service musician myself, I think you gave a very good overview there of our operational role, because I think a lot of people you've mentioned were military band, right, and they think of troop in the colour. Or if you mention to officers in the army that you're a musician, okay, people think, yes, we know of them, we saw them at a dinner night, okay, whereas you've actually painted the other side of the coin, which I think is really, really good. As you just highlighted, we're going to see more diversity within army musicians in the last 10 years. Something I was going to say is over the enduring operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, members of the Territorial Army have very much come to the fore, okay, in filling spare capacity in regular Army units. It's really good that we've got, say, 5 regular Army bands have deployed in the last 4 years. But why have our Territorial Army bands not been utilised for the wealth of talent that they actually have? Because I think TA bands must be the only part of the TA that haven't actually been utilised on operations. And to the bean counters at the MOD, and places like that, that's people that know the cost of everything and the value of nothing, to quote Oscar Wilde. They're going to be saying, well, what are we getting out of our TA bands? They're just a function band playing for officers' dinner nights. But excellent presentation to end.
Thank you. Do you want me to comment on that? Yeah, I mean, the Territorial Army, our reserve component is becoming very much more important. The size of the regular army is reducing. The size of the TA is growing in order to balance that. What does that mean in musical terms? Well, of course, you have seen that bands are deploying on operations, not always for the full 6 months. I mean, Kosovo, Iraq, they were the full 6-month tour. More often these days, in the stabilisation period, our regular bands are going out to cover about 6 weeks, generally over Remembrance, and then back out Christmas and New Year, the very important time of the year. And of course, Queen's Birthday Parade in June is another time where bands are quite important. Where does the TA fit in? Well, the TA does not formally have a deployable role in that regard. It is something that's being looked at the moment, how we engage with our bands in the Territorial Army. But we can, and we do, with the regular army, deploy individual augmentees. So this is musicians who are soldiers who go out to do specific jobs because they want a taste of the action. They want to mix it up with the professional soldiers doing what they do to give them a better understanding of the army that they fit into. So we do have soldiers deploying as individual augmentees. That is open to the Territorial Army, and we do have, I think he's either there or some part of his tour. We've got a soldier from one of the Scottish TA bands currently out on operations. But I think the TA bands going on mass, I don't necessarily see why they shouldn't. There is a challenge, of course, in getting them together, getting a training and making it happen. No reason why they shouldn't, though, perhaps. Where I see it being more effective and more easily achievable is for them to backfill the regular band. So that if a regular band needs a number of musicians to bring it up to strength for a period of time, perhaps whilst we've got some soldiers away, then that is how they can support and be part of the package. So I think there's debate going on, there's debate to be had, there isn't a definitive answer.
We've got time for a couple more quick questions. There's one burning to come from the front, actually.
No, just one very swift one.
Oh.
What is your relationship with your counterparts in the Navy and the RAF? Is it cooperation or healthy competition?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? Yeah.
Quick answer, please, Bob.
I get on with the Royal Marines really, really well because the Principal Director of Music is the same height as me. The Principal Director of Music of the Royal Air Force is 6.5 foot and I don't talk to him. To expand, no, the other services are, we've got the three principals, myself and Wing Commander Duncan Stubbs from the Royal Air Force and Lieutenant Colonel Nick Grace from the Royal Marines. We have been in post about the same amount of time. I'm the eldest, so I'm going first. And we have had a fantastic relationship. We've closed ranks when we've been facing the threat of reductions and reorganizations. We've all survived really, really well. We support one another fantastically well. Hasn't always been the case. It was always a case of let's keep our bit quiet and away from them. It's not like that anymore, and I'm very proud of the fact that we've developed a very strong relationship. Having gone through my presentation, I'm going to tell you now that last night was my dine out. I've come straight from the party here, which is why I'm drinking lots of water, okay? And I bring that up because to emphasise the point, Wing Commander Duncan Stubbs and his wife came to my farewell bash last night. So yes, we have a great relationship and we work together.
Another question.
If I could just ask very quickly, I'm wondering how many bands there are altogether in the army. When I was in it a long time ago, in an infantry regiment that had its own band. I don't know whether that's the case now.
Yeah, a very, very quick summary of where we're at. When I joined the Army in '75, we had 73 regular Army bands. Many of them were very small, regimental bands of about 21, and 21 if every position was filled, so often under strength and often quite difficult to be effective with that number of musicians. The biggest reorganisation came in 1994, that was Options for Change. And the Army had a massive, massive shake-up, and we went from 68 regular bands down to 29 regular bands. So we lost, I think, was that 39 bands we lost. But actually, the bands that we kept, many of them were grown into much bigger and more effective bands. So that was 29. A few years later, we went through Future Army Structures in 2006, I think it was, and we lost a few more at that point. We've now got 22 regular Army bands, and we have got in this country 19 Territorial Army bands. So we're still, with, if you think about it, 800 in the regular Army, and about 450 or so, 400 or so in the TA. We are still the single biggest employer of musicians in this country, which is quite amazing. But that's where we're at, 22 regular and 19 TA.
Thank you. And on that note, Bob, thank you very much indeed.